in 1814. That was the end of the War of 1812. And what was the point of the War of 1812? It was to murder Native Americans, kill Tecumseh. Another thing I think about when I think about the War of 1812, that's when the British came and burnt down the White House. The only time the White House has ever been burnt down, War of 1812. And so that's unfortunate. But the Treaty of Ghent, the reason why it's a Christmas story, because the Treaty of Ghent was signed on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1814. Well, many in the Western world celebrated Christmas Eve. The United States and Great Britain sat down to sign a famous peace agreement ending the War of 1812. The Treaty of Ghent negotiations had begun in Ghent, Belgium, earlier that August, the same month that British forces burned down the White House and the U.S. Capitol in Washington. So the White House, the U.S. Capitol, both of them got burnt down. Burnt, this fucking gone, right? After more than 4 months of debate, the American and British delegations agreed to a settlement that essentially ended the war as a draw. All conquered territories were relinquished and captured soldiers and vessels were returned to their respective nations, while the Treaty of Ghent effectively ended a 32-month conflict. It did not take effect in the United States until it was ratified in February 1815. In fact, one of the greatest American victories of the war, the Battle of New Orleans, January 1815, came more than a week after the Treaty of Ghent had been signed. So, New Year's Eve, war is over, they signed it, but it was in Belgium, in Ghent, so nobody fucking knew about it. And then Andrew Jackson became, a great fucking victor in the Battle of New Orleans. Makes me, think of that song. In 1814, we took a little trip down with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We cooked a little bacon and we cooked a little beans. And we fought the fucking British in the town of New Orleans. So, one more thing I think about it, actually, 60% of all the casualties of the War of 1812 were Kentuckians. So, Kentuckians are the ones that supplied their men that wound up getting killed. The Battle of River Raisin, when they went to Frenchtown, they marched, it was close to Detroit, they marched all the way up there in the very beginning, wound up being fucking slaughtered. General Winchester, he, built his house a fucking mile away. And that was it, it was actually weird because he was okay, but he was, just a weird fucking thing. A true leader is that's one that's in the field with their troops, leading them, not one that's got their fucking headquarters, about 5 miles away from them. So, War of 1812, it's also the Canadians, the birth of Canada, is one of the great battles for Canada because they got to, it was essentially America was trying to steal Canadian land, and Canada held strong and protected their borders, and so Canada today, look at that war, I don't know if it's their independence or if it's the very beginning or their first major victory, but I know it's a really, good battle for them. So, that's it. Oh, Henry Clay. That's the last thing. Henry Clay, a Kentuckian, right, who fucking was a war hawk, pushed this into this thing, thinking it was a good-ass fucking thing, and then he wound up being against the Mexican-American War. So it's weird. He's got this weird fucking, he wants to kill, he wants to get into wars, and then later on he doesn't. Mexican-American War wound up doubling the size of the country. It was bullshit because it started on a lie. War of 1812, there wasn't really any victories to it. It sort of did kill out a lot of Native Americans, so that it made it easier for the Americans to take over the Northwest. But there wasn't anything good about the War of 1812. Henry Clay was a war hawk. He's the one that had pushed it into it. So he pushed for the War of 1812. It was bad. Then the Mexican-American War came up, and he was against it. Was very much opposed to it. And I think even Abraham Lincoln was against it too. but that actually did commence, and we were victorious. So war is bullshit, you know, regardless. But it seemed like Henry Clay picked the wrong war. He picked the wrong fucking war. Fucking Henry Clay, that drunk, fucking gambling, you know, just lunatic fucking his slaves, hated them and shit, treated the slaves all shitty. And the one slave that runs away, he's like, oh, it's because we spoiled them. We spoiled them, and that's why they ran away. You know, even if I haven't read about anything specifically he did, but his fucking kids were like really shitty to the fucking slaves, and they're slaves, you know, they're slaves. So Henry Clay is what fucked over Kentucky. Kentucky was a good poor man's country until Henry Clay. Henry Clay got there, and then it became aristocracy, became slavery, became, you know, a lawyer's state. It's a lawyer state today. 1 million fucking poor people. Why? Because the lawyers are the ones that run this shit. And back in Daniel Boone's time, right? You had a house. It was a poor man's country. You had a house. You get a little, you know, establish yourself, and it was exciting. But eventually, Daniel Boone gets fucked. He doesn't get any of his land. Same thing with the Abraham Lincoln's father, Thomas Lincoln, because of land titles, because of the fucking complicated bullshit system of land titles. People would stay at their houses, be working there for 15, 20, 25 years, and then somebody, you know, a speculator, an absentee speculator might show up 20 years later and say, hey, by the way, this is my fucking land. Why? Well, because I'm a rich man and I paid these Virginians for this land, or I fought in the French Indian War, so they give me this huge tract of land. The very first person in Breckinridge County, 94,000 acres. 94,000 acre land of tract of land. What the fuck? Who the fuck needs 94,000 acres? And I guarantee you that land, other people, Native Americans and white Americans, had been sitting there. You know, for a decade or two, doing their thing. So, War of 1812, December 24th, 1814, that was a Christmas story, and that's a good thing. The war ended, and the negotiations were in Belgium. So, Belgium, that's where the Paris attackers came from, right? The people who attacked Paris had been working on their plans, hatching their plans, working on the, you know, what they was going to do in Belgium. Belgian waffles, right? You got the Belgian waffles, and that was in Ghent. So, Merry Christmas.